Hi. Welcome back to another episode on the Healthy Wisdom series with Dr. Jen Chen. Today, we're going to start a new mini-series on the wisdom of identity. Healthy Wisdomers, have you ever looked in the mirror and actually thought to yourself, I don't recognize the person looking back at me? I mean, you think you know them, but you're not as sure as you should be. Now, if you're feeling a little lost right now, I just want to tell you, you are not alone. Many people at this moment in time are experiencing a mix of emotions because we're actually given time to reflect and really think about who we are at our core. Now, to break down the definition of identity, it is actually composed of a number of components. It is a combination of your qualities, beliefs, personality, looks, and expressions that make up a person. So what do we mean by that? The qualities are the characteristics that define us. Your beliefs are what you think about yourself and the kind of person that you are. And your personality is the grand portion of who we are. The looks and expressions are the way that we are viewed by the world. Now, identity is shaped by a lot of different factors. And one of them happens to be obviously our environment. Our surrounding environment is a very big part of how we identify ourselves. But we are also shaped by our family, our culture, our friends, and our personal interests. And so when we have a strong sense of identity, it does bring a sense of comfort and security to who we are. And ultimately, it absolutely relates to our need to belong. So in essence, we are a combination of our inner and outer selves. Our inner selves being what we think and feel, and our outer selves meaning what we say and do. So I wanted to share with you guys today three different types of exercises that I find is really helpful in finding oneself, because finding oneself is the main way out here. If you have ever struggled with your sense of identity, well, these three exercises will at least get you started on that journey to finding who you truly are or who you truly want to be. So the first activity that I would recommend is to have a journal. And in this journal, you're going to write down things that are going to help you define who you are. And the first part of that is to use lists if it helps you, because not everybody likes to just write like paragraphs and paragraphs about their thoughts and feelings. So I, for one, am a checklist type of person. So I gravitate towards lists. And so this is one way that I feel would be helpful, especially for people who don't necessarily have as much time, to get you started on thinking about, sort of different types of scenarios and different components that you could actually start to highlight so that you can define, yourself better. And the first list that I would recommend you do is to list out things that you like and dislike. And you can make it into two different columns if you like, and you can have them side by side, and sometimes, you'll find that there's actually a lot of analogous components of likes and dislikes. So for example, the things that I love are food, bubble tea, and sense of humor. That's just to get your list started, and so some equivalent to those likes are my dislikes. One of my biggest pet peeves actually is negativity. I don't like to surround myself with people who are negative or who exude negativity or who are overly pessimistic about certain aspects or all of the aspects of their lives. I find that it really brings my energy down. So for certain types of people who are consistently in that negative mode, I try to make sure that I don't associate myself too much with that because it does bring my energy down. And so that's one of my big things. Um, the second thing that I could immediately think of is people who are rude to others. I actually dislike that. I feel like we all deserve a sense of respect and courtesy towards others. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter where they came from. Courteous and courtesy is absolutely one of like the things that I absolutely value, and I think it's very important to not be rude to others. And another thing that kind of resonates with the whole food and sort of attitude is the people who are picky at restaurants. That's also a pet peeve of mine. I really dislike that. A lot of people like to call over the waiter and say, "Oh, this and this and this, we're terrible and stuff." It's okay not to like a certain dish, but sometimes, perhaps the waiter didn't actually make that dish. So, it was, the chefs, certainly a little bit more responsible for that, but there's no point in giving your waiter a hard time just because you didn't exactly like the dish that the chef made. So I definitely feel that, the pickiness at a restaurant can kind of really throw me off. So that's on my list of dislikes. So that's the first list, your likes and dislikes. The second one, actually, we quickly touched upon when we talked about rudeness. The second one is values. What are the things that you value in life? A lot of times, a lot of people will, first off, they think of family, whether it's your immediate family or your extended family, and our friends. Um, and so sometimes, that's one of the easiest qualities to jump to, but I'd like to kind of take you a little further and go, well, some people value like fairness, fairness in life, they may feel that, everything should be 50-50 in life, and if that's you, that's great, just make sure you have that on your values list, because it provides you a good framework as to where you're going from. And so that you can be congruent with how you're thinking, how you're acting. So for me, one of the really big ones in terms of my values list is integrity. I value integrity above a lot of other values and qualities. And I find integrity is one of those things that I absolutely try to live by. And I definitely stay away from people who lack integrity or have shown a lack of integrity. And also a sense of security. I find that to be, one of the sort of top values, especially during the recent time of the pandemic. A lot of people are realizing that, a sense of security, whether it's financially or emotionally, and relationship wise, this is the time where, this value has certainly, become a highlight. And so the second list, kind of surrounds itself around values. The third part actually surrounds itself around goals. And I like to say that Mr. Brandon Burchard actually described it beautifully in terms of goals in life. He breaks it down into four categories that I'd love to share with you guys today. And the first one being your being goal. Being goal, Being, who you want to be is a very sort of interesting part of goal setting, because most of the time when we think of goals, we think about what achievements we want to, accomplish in life, and we don't actually think about who we want to be. So I love the fact that he highlights that, your being goal should actually center itself around self-respect and character. And ultimately, you want to be feeling good about yourself and who you are as a person. So think about that. Who do you want to be? How do you want to be with others? Which then brings me to the second goal, which is your social goals. Social goals are goals that center around, what types of relationships with others you want to have. So do you want to be caring? Do you want to have connected relationships? Do you want to be somebody who mutually respects, your relationships with others? So that is a really good aspect to look into. How do you want to be, socially, and set a goal for yourself. And the third one is around creation. Creation goals are about it can center around creativity or maybe creating a brand new experience. So creation is something that it it helps us focus on a different aspect of our lives, because a lot of times we may not be thinking about creating. We think about living our life from day to day basis, and we don't think about, well, what is it that we are creating in this world? And what type of impact can we have on this world as we create new experiences, new relationships, and new achievements that have an impact on other people? Can you contribute in a way to, our society as a whole, to your families, to your colleagues? So this is something that I found to be really useful because, we're not used to thinking of that aspect of our lives. And last but not least, the fourth goal is growth goals. Honestly, I don't remember where I heard it from, but if we're not growing, we're dying. And you can look to Mother Nature in terms of this, because if you had a house plant, I can almost guarantee you that the leaves and the branches will tend to grow towards where the sunlight is coming from. And so if you happen to have a pot that's, sitting to the left of the window, chances are the branches and the leaves are going to start growing towards the right-hand side where the sunlight is actually shooting in. So it's really interesting that even Mother Nature, continues to flourish in those areas that are nurturing growth. And so growth goals are really good to have as a good framework alongside your other three goals, and these serve as guidelines as to how you want to live your life. It's almost like when a business is running, it's got to have the different components in line for you to actually develop and grow over time. So it's a great way to have a framework or a structural sort of aspect to how you want to grow your life. So the second thing is, if you have yet to maybe identify something that really kind of fills you up with joy and passion, well, I'd like to recommend that you try out new things and expose yourself to different types of experiences. Because quite often you'll find that beyond your comfort zone, you'll actually find, that magic, that that sense of joy and passion in the different aspects of those experiences and those new things that you've actually tried. So that's a very good way to expand beyond, what you already know and what you think you know. And the third thing is, this is an exercise actually that I learned from one of my mentors, Melanie Spring. And I love this exercise because it basically asks you to call up, 5 of your friends and ask them to describe you using one word answers. And each friend of yours can create a mini list of 3 to 5 of these single words to describe you. I have to say, when I did this exercise last year, this was an eye opener. It was such an interesting point that when you're trying to find yourself, it's as much about, sort of uncovering what's already there, but it's also about learning what you want to be there. So there were certain characteristics that, you may not think, you're exuding or expressing in your sort of the way you are with other people. But I gotta say that, your close friends will actually pick up on the nuances, and they may actually sort of bring light to certain characteristics that you may not have thought are actually very prominent in you. And so this was a really great way for me to identify certain aspects of myself that I didn't even notice. So I absolutely love all three of these exercises, and I highly recommend that you guys give it a try. So to recap, number one, to journal. And the 3 types of lists that I've encouraged here are likes and dislikes, secondly, values, and the 4 types of goals: your being goal, your social goal, your creation goal, and your growth goals.